for joining us for another conversation around good. Our webinar today, we're actually called Good Table Talk. That's part of our family of sharing good stories. I'm Tracy Zerden with Made Possible By, and we love to make good loud. We make giving easy for community-minded businesses. We love to connect causes, companies and individuals so we can do more good together. And it's my honor today to have this crew. We got a powerhouse today. Their bios are like miles long, so that's going to take most of our time. No, it's not going to take most of our time, but it'll take some of our time to list their bios of all the cool things that they do. So I want to introduce to you Erika Lucas, Sarah Sears, and Jefferson Killgore. We'll start with you, Jefferson. I'm going to tell a little bit about you, and then you can give us a little snapshot of you. Jefferson Killgore is the owner relations coordinator for Mach Resources. He's worked in criminal justice reform, which is a scary thing in Oklahoma. Has been the development director for Fields and Futures, working with kids. You've worked with several nonprofits, Healthy Living, Mentoring Project. You're also on the board for Whitefields, Special Care, Young Life, and you work for the advisory committees for advocacy on behalf of Remerge. And is it OCCF? Is that what that is?
Yeah, the Oklahoma City Community Foundation has a Wellness Now Alliance, and I serve on their advisory committee.
Okay, you are a busy person. So give us a little bit more about you, more personal.
More personal, Oklahoma City born and raised. Both of my parents are educators, which I think is what leads to my slant to find ways to serve the community in whatever capacity makes sense. More personal, a beautiful wife of 15 years who I stole from Kansas City after finding her in Stillwater at Oklahoma State University. We are fortunate with 3 amazing kids that we are just trying to find ways to be better parents, be better leaders, be better advocates for our community. And my background is predominantly in the health and wellness industry, working for the YMCA and doing corporate wellness in other capacities. But by way of serving others from push-ups and pull-ups, you find yourself serving others in ways to improve their quality of life. So as you mentioned, whether that was with criminal justice reform or committing my time to community service with other nonprofits, just trying to look for opportunities to be a better part of a better Oklahoma City and a future that serves and loves our neighbors well.
Well, I can vouch for Jefferson. I've spent some time with him touring some jails and just hearing his heart for those individuals that a lot of people just kind of push off to the side or, maybe not even necessarily even think about, but Jefferson does. So thank you, Jefferson. I appreciate your heart. Miss Sarah Sears, she has the super cool background going on with her color-coded books. I love that. I think that's great. Sarah is a founder and owner of S Design. She is a certified brand specialist and design enthusiast. Before opening her own business, she was an adjunct professor for Oklahoma Christian, Northeast State University, and you've given lectures at Columbia College in Chicago. Basically, she's your girl. If your brand needs some help, she's your girl. She also serves on many boards. She's part of the leadership team for Good Thinking, a nonprofit based out of Atlanta, working with social good organizations throughout the U.S. So Sarah, tell us a little bit more about you.
Well, I was also born in Oklahoma, and I went away to school in Kansas, and then I came back. And I have 2 beautiful children, Isabel and Olivia, and they are both seniors, one in high school and one in college right now. So that's kind of a strange time for that, but everyone's really thriving. So I just feel really lucky. But we started out, I think my connection to all of this, we started out doing almost all nonprofit work when I started S Design, and then did more government work and corporate work as the firm grew. And so I've always seen a connection in how partnering nonprofit with corporate is just a win-win for everyone. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing that, because that's what makes all the difference, right? Okay, and last but not least, certainly we have Erika Lucas. She is the co-founder of Stitch Crew, which is an accelerator program in partnership with the Oklahoma City Thunder. And that's how I met Erika. Made Possible By was part of Batch 5. part of that accelerator program, which was hugely beneficial. It was like getting an MBA really fast. So it was a great program. Erika has also founded with a group of other women a company called Vest, which is a curated network of C-suite women working together to expedite the pipeline of more women in power. Want to talk more about that for sure. This is a great year for that. Her TED Talk on America's $1 trillion blind spot is highly regarded in the venture capital industry for addressing the funding gap that exists for women and entrepreneurs of color. Definitely want to talk more about that too. Prior to launching Stitch Crew Invest, Erika was a partner at a private equity firm with investments in the US and Europe. Before that, she was the deputy director for the Oklahoma Department of Commerce. There we go, not Congress, Commerce. And she currently sits on the boards of Arvis Bank, Oklahoma Policy Institute, Diversion Hub, Oklahoma City County Health Department, and 36 Degrees North. Oh my goodness, you're making this too much. My mouth can't even comprehend it all. So Erika, give us a little bit more personal about you.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy. Unlike Sarah and Jeff, I was born in Mexico, so I'm not a born Okie, but born and raised in Mexico, came to the U.S. the first time with my mother and my sister. And then I went back to Mexico. They stayed here. They assimilated very well. I miss Mexico too much. So I went back and lived with my grandparents. And then the second time I came over, I met my husband, who is an Okie, and I decided to stay here. So yeah, we have two beautiful Mexican-American girls. Sarah, a little bit younger than yours. I have one in middle school and one in high school.
I didn't realize that you went back to Mexico for a while. I've never heard that portion of it. Did you just not groove on America when you were first here, or what was it?
It wasn't that. It's just I really am. When we first migrated, my mom's sister lived in Chickasha, Oklahoma. So that's where I learned my English too. It wasn't just a cultural shock. It was just very different because in Mexico, I lived in a big city. So there was just a lot of components that influenced my decision. And I love my grandparents. My mom was a single mother. So I was kind of raised by all three, my mother and my grandparents. So it was family to me. So it was second nature to say, oh, I'm going to go live with my grandparents now.
Okay. How old were you?
I hadn't finished high school yet. So it was in my junior year. So 15-ish. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I've never heard that part of that story. That's cool. Chickasha would be definitely a small town.
It's a great town and great people. But I was 13 when we first moved there. Again, it was a culture shock. I didn't know the language at all. Like I didn't know English when we first moved. Yeah. So it was, and then I missed my home, my grandparents and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, cool. So Sarah, I want to start with you. I'm not sure, listeners, when you are joining us, but right now it is December of 2020. And like most people, I think we're all pretty good to see that, perfectly happy to see this year ending, right? We're ready to start new, start fresh. It's been a year of growth, a year of a lot of loss, but there's also been some good things that have come out of 2020. But Sarah, talk to me about how demanding this year has been for many businesses and how you have seen companies address community needs in the midst of this. I mean, everybody's hurting to some degree, especially the unemployment level is really high, and just the struggle to get out and find toilet paper has been hard this year, right? So.
Well, I know, I was thinking about this, and I think, there's been so many people actively doing things. And one of the companies I work with is Verbode. And Sarah Beducci is the leader of that company. And one of the things I noticed, we had a cold snap a while back, and she hopped on social media. At first started with $10,000 and then raised, I think, almost $30,000, and just, was just buying up coats and gloves and getting them to the Homeless Alliance. And she's on their board. But I think that's a great example of, finding something that you're passionate about. And one of the things that she's passionate about is making sure that people have a roof over their heads. And I think that that perfectly aligns with what she does for a living. And but also she's always giving it back to the community. And I think that you know, it impacts the community and the way that people perceive her company. So I mean, that's not why she does it. I mean, she does it because she loves it, and she wants to make sure people have a warm place to sleep. So, but I think just when you see leaders that just, that they're just empowered to get, I mean, you know, within an hour, hop on social media and just start getting it done. So, I mean, I think that's pretty incredible. And also, I think what Thunder did, they're always out in the community. We've talked about that before, but I think getting out the vote was a big thing this year, just getting people activated and making sure everyone knows how important their vote is. So it was a weird year.
It was a weird year.
I feel like everybody was trying to find the good that they could do in the world this year, which was really exciting to see.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes crisis bring out the best in us. I mean, it can go either way, but I think we've seen a lot of people rise this year in that. So
Sure.
Great, thank you. So Jefferson, you know, Make Possible is all about aligning company causes and people to do more good together. And you've worked in the nonprofit world, you've worked in the for-profit world. So when you hear corporate social responsibility, what does that mean to you? And how have you seen companies you've worked with that have done it well, big or small companies? How does it look different for the different people?
Well, I think that's a great point. When you say big or small, there's no company too big and there's no company too small when it comes to corporate responsibility. I mentioned before that my background was predominantly in health and wellness. So I was working in corporate wellness. I was helping everybody from, 800 downtown corporate employees to pursuing a better means of health and wellness to 1,400 field employees. And what it looks like in rural Oklahoma or West Texas to be healthy and well is a little bit different than what your access to resources would be. But that's kind of awareness of what corporate responsibility looks like. It's an awareness of what your resources are. So when I transitioned from a role in predominantly health and wellness into community outreach, it was employee volunteerism, it was corporate giving. So identifying what the need is. And as a downtown Oklahoma City oil and gas company, we looked at our downtown neighbors. So there was looking at a homeless population. There was looking at, education in Oklahoma has a lot of room for improvement. So we had 800 downtown employees that could go volunteer as their time saw fit. And that could be a reading buddy at a local elementary school. That could be serving at a regional food bank and providing, the time of an employee is just as valuable as, writing a check for $500 or $5,000. So looking beyond just, well, I have a check, let's write it. How do you lend your talents beyond just a checkbook? And another thing that we found as far as corporate responsibility, whether that's serving on a board or working for, a company that has 15 or 500 people, what are your real desires? What are your passions? It'd be difficult if I, loaded up 50 employees and took them to volunteer for a cause that wasn't of their concern. I won't name any specifically, but say somebody wanted, the beautification of, some abandoned building in some rural part of Oklahoma. Well, who's going to see it? What's the need? What's the tie to it? But if you had those same 50 employees and they were also from that same small town, then they would have a different passion for it. They would have a different sense of investment, and they could have a different sense of seeing their influence. So for a corporate company, regardless of its size, to be able to identify their culture and then tie that to their giving, to their desire, to their influence, provides a different sense of purpose and meaning. And I think that's a reflection of community.
Definitely. You made me think of when COVID first started, when quarantine, when we were all shut down, High Tech Plumbing out of Edmond just called a restaurant and gave $500 for people to come in and get drive-through. And then other businesses heard about it and started adding to it and adding to it, adding to it. And then it turned into, there was a $5,000 tab for people to just drive through and grab a meal, just to be able to get out for a minute, get the kids out of the house and grab some food and head back in, and to keep those businesses going, right? I mean,
Yeah.
His restaurants were hit hard in 2020.
Well, I think of another company here locally in Oklahoma City that they were about to celebrate a milestone anniversary. I think it was, 50 years or something like that. Well, they couldn't have a large gathering, so they reallocated those funds to their employees and said, "We want you to go spend $50 on, supporting a local business, and we want you to spend the other $50 on going to donate to a local charity that matters to you." So while the local company was disappointed that they couldn't have their big celebration of their 50th or 75th anniversary, they still wanted to empower their employees to get involved in the community, which I thought was, a really strong reflection of leadership.
Oh, that's brilliant. Can you share who that is, or should you not share who that is?
I don't know that that's mine to share, because I think that was also a reflection of their leadership. Was they didn't want to, label their banner across the wall saying, "Look at us, we're doing so much good, giving away this, these resources." Part of their internal messaging to those employees was, the time is always right to do right, regardless of whether or not you get recognition.
Mm-hmm. Well, and their story is more powerful when their employees are the ones that are sharing it, instead of them tooting their own horn, so to speak. But when their employees are out there sharing that they got to do that, it brings more power to it. That's great. I'm gonna investigate that. You got me curious now. I want to know who that was. So Erika, you and Chris, we in our house, we call you the serial entrepreneurs because you're always coming up with something new and genius. And through Stitch Crew, you're training up new entrepreneurs every day. You're just finished batch 6. You've already got new applicants for batch 7. So what's the main thing that you communicate to entrepreneurs when they're first started? And I could probably tell you one of the things that you would say because I've gone through your program, but what's the main component that someone needs to have if they're going to start a business? What do you need?
Our slogan is actually that nobody builds companies alone. So that's actually why we started Stitch Crew. We are serial entrepreneurs, particularly Chris.
Yeah, he is.
Way before. And we struggle. Unfortunately, what you see in social media or in the mainstream media in general is the success stories, right? Of how Jeff Bezos got to where he is, or how Mark Zuckerberg got to where he is. But you don't necessarily, and those are actually outliers because they had plenty of cushion to fail. Most entrepreneurs don't. And so, and it can get very lonely. So one of the reasons why we started Stitch Crew even prior to the accelerator was to kind of bring light to that and bring light to the mental struggles that goes on when you launch a company with limited resources, with limited access to capital and social networks. So we wanted to create an organization more so than training, because I also don't believe that there's a clear blueprint for businesses. I don't think you can teach entrepreneurship. I think you have to do it to learn, because it depends on the business model, the clients that you're serving, and so on. But more than anything, we just wanted to create a community of founders giving back to each other, mentors offering their time to support new entrepreneurs. And then we wanted to find the right investors that really wanted to invest kind of in companies like yours. We believe, and I think Jeff mentioned this, we believe that capitalism 2.0, it's going to be comprised of companies that can make lots of profit, but also do good in their communities.
Now, it was such a great, you guys do create a great community. It was so helpful to even not just jump on a phone call or to email or whatever, but to get on Slack and just hear somebody going, "I'm struggling today." And we can all be like, "It's okay. Just take that next step." Because you see this huge pile of where we have to go, what we have to do. And Chris was always so encouraging to me, because I want everything to be perfect. You want your website to be perfect. You want all these things to just be all bright and shiny. And he's like, "Just go, just get it out there. Just go." Because you will, you'll get 2.0 and 3.0, but you want it to be bright and shiny. So Stitch Crew is a great program. If you have an idea, hit up Erika. It's perfect time right now too. She's starting batch 7. So there you go. Sarah, you started S Design over 25 years ago. I can't believe that, because I met you, shortly after you just started. So if you could go back and tell your then self something, what would you tell your sweet little then self 25 years ago?
I would tell myself, do the work that makes you feel good. I think when I was younger, I've always worked well with people. I'm kind of one of those, I like harmony, and I like a challenge. And so I think I took on a lot of projects where that were really challenging people. And so I think that I probably would have been better served sometimes just working with people that made me feel good. And not that I didn't learn a lot from that, but I think I could have done more about being picky and finding the right fit sometimes, and knowing my worth. I did a lot of volunteer work when I started. I worked for mostly nonprofits. When I first went to work, I just thought, well, I'll just work for the people I want to work for. But when it came time, when I got pregnant and I was pulling all-nighters and it came time to hire the first person, my accountant told me I'd given away almost $90,000 of work. And so there was no money to hire help for myself. So, I eventually did, but that was, saying no to things was difficult for me. Balancing that was really difficult for me. So I would have told myself to not give it away. And then just to remind myself that it's a marathon, not a sprint. I mean, I was very good at, I always went to work every day and I worked a full day. And but I think I should have taken some time off. I never really took any time off, especially once I had my kids. And, at the time, my husband and we had a restaurant business, catering business, and I had my business. So I was spread pretty thin. So I think I would have encouraged myself to just not have to do it all right now, and taken some time off. Mm-hmm. So it's still hard for me to take time off.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, those are hard lessons for everybody, to create healthy boundaries in your life, and learning to say no is okay. It's okay. Yeah. We have a second batch of children. We have our first batch and our second batch. We're like Erika and Stitch Crew, many batches. I hope I don't have any more batches, but we have a 22, 17, and now we have a 2-year-old. And our 2-year-old didn't talk. He's a foster baby and he didn't talk very well. And we had to teach him how to say no. And my 17-year-old at the time was like, why did you teach him no? Because now he knows no very well. He can yell no very well. But that's an important word. We need to know how to say that. You need to, and that ties into knowing your worth, to say, no, I'm worth more than that. I can say no to this, so I can say yes to something better, and creating those boundaries. But those are hard. And those boundaries ties into taking time off, right? To know your worth, that you deserve to take time off.
Well, I think I think I could have been a better leader, if I had had time off. Mm-hmm. Like, I think back and I just was always under a lot of pressure. I just felt, and so I think that would have eliminated some stress in my life, to take some time off. And I think I could have been a better leader that way, for everybody.
You clear your head,
Yeah.
Get out.
Well, setting a good example,
mm-hmm.
too, of self-care.
Yes.
For the people that work for me.
Yes, exactly. So Jefferson, we talked a little bit about companies doing good in their communities. Can you tell us some people that you know of, because you have a great reference from both sides, companies who are doing good, not just writing checks, but getting out there and volunteering, or maybe opening their offices before COVID for people to come in and use their space, or anything different than just writing a check?
Yeah, I think, opening your office is a great example. I think of, or even just, I've got a friend who's an entrepreneur who has been doing Zoom long before it was what everyone was doing. So in the infancy of COVID, he was quick to provide tutorials on what's appropriate lighting for a Zoom call look like. How do you limit distractions? He took his entrepreneurial spirit and led that to a lot of different teachers that said, hey, when you start doing Zoom classes with your kids, these are the first 5 things you need to let them know as it relates to what's going to lead to a successful Zoom interaction for a classroom full of 3rd graders. Lending your space with or without Zoom, knowing that, I'm in a conference room that's not used all day, every day, but if there's a nonprofit that needs to come in and host a meeting, or, set up goodie bags to go send off to a school or to a church or to an otherwise, that space isn't always easy to come by. But doing things as a team, I also think makes a big difference. It helps create a stronger culture for those coworkers that are volunteering together. And you kind of get to, know one another outside of the cubicle or the office, but at the same time, you get to learn more about somebody's interests. So we have we have Oklahoma Blood Institute come to the office, 4 times a year. Well, why do we do that? Well, I have a coworker that's in the geology department whose daughter's life was saved by the Oklahoma Blood Institute. I have a coworker who used to go with his dad every time he donated blood, and he saw his dad literally rolling up his sleeves to make a difference in the community and save a life. So it's those unique little things where you don't have to look too far. You just have to look at ways in which your time can make a difference, and be clever and be creative with it. I was at another company where one of the things that they often donated as far as financial resources was to improve local neighborhood parks, or parks at at a playground at a local elementary school. And it was one of those deals where they had an employee that really championed that concept of having a resource of a basketball goal or a teeter-totter or a playground structure. So that was how they would help do little micro fundraisers to be able to build a better playground for local elementary schools, because it's one of those deals where I don't want to say everybody needs, I think they do, but everybody knows the difference of a playground for recess or in the neighborhood that can make a difference. So finding something that matters to you and investing your time there or your financial resources there.
Yeah, it takes both. It really takes both. I love hearing unique ways that people give back to do good in their community. I did a podcast with Mike from Smirk Media, and he gave all his employees the day off on election day. Oh, yeah. And I thought that was brilliant. It's a small thing, right? It's a small thing, but especially in 2020, we needed the day off on election day, right? We just needed it off. So I thought that was a great idea. He said some of the people went together to vote too. So, create a little bit of unity and getting it done. So thank you. I appreciate that. So Sarah, talk to me about, in the modern economy, the concept of being socially responsible. What is the impact? What impact does that have on a brand when they do it well?
Well, I
think help them do it well. When you help them do it well, right?
Well, okay. So, I just think that people can tell if you're living your values or not. So, I think one of the most, part of it's kind of part of building a brand, is to if a brand is the gut feeling that people have about you, one of the first things you do is develop your core values, right? So those have to be authentic. Like, you can't borrow someone else's core values. You really have to figure out, who are we and what does that mean and how do we show up? And then you want to attract people that have the same values to work there, right? So then you have people that have a shared set of values. So then when you start, doing work in the community, it's authentic, And so I really encourage people. Sometimes I see people wanting to just do something that someone else is doing. And I really encourage people to sit with it for a minute and really think about, how does that roll out of who we are and what we're doing and what is the most important thing for us? Because I do think that people can tell. Just like with stock photos, if you do those things and then you build those stories and share those stories, then that feels good to people. That feeling, and then that translates in value for everyone,
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the authenticity, right? You have to be real behind it because people can tell. That made me think of Allie Cunningham out at Sunnyside Diner, how she gives her time and resources to the Other Options Food Bank. Her whole heart is in that. She has run Cookies Thanksgiving, when they give thousands of meals to people every Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. This year it looked different, but she really, you just know, you talk to her and you just feel that she cares about that.
And when people find that connection, it just gives them so much energy. It's like boundless energy when you get in that zone, which is different than if you're not in the right place, just like why some employees aren't at the right company, finding that place where you fit. And same with, customers, finding those businesses that you want to support. It's just it's a good feel fest.
Exactly. And you have to get out there and try something, right? To find your thing. So get out there and try something new. And if it's not your thing that motivates you, that moves you or makes you angry, or you want to see change, then go find something that is.
And I think just being present, like keeping your eyes open and seeing things that connect with you, seeing opportunities to connect with people and help people out.
There's no lack of opportunities.
That's right. There's
always
no
lack of opportunities for sure. I know. So Erika, when working with startups, how do you all communicate the importance of giving back? I mean, it's hard. Startups don't have money, right? So sometimes it's probably just volunteering, or I don't know, maybe pretty quickly some startups do have money. I know one of the startups that was in our batch, round 2, in their year 2, they raised, I think it was like $15,000 for leukemia, and got to hand out big checks to these people all over the country, just because they saw a need. They saw something that happened and they rolled with it, and people jumped on board. So how do you all communicate that as being important?
Oh, from day one. I mean, the whole basis of our program is we don't take any equity in the companies that we support, and we also don't charge any money to go through our program. And all of our mentors are on a give first basis. So they come here and they give all of this coaching and support to the founders without charging them anything or having an expectation that they're going to get something out other than friendships. So instead of preaching to them about the need to do it, I think we just, like Sarah said, we just show it, we live it. And the one thing we do talk about, and Tracy, I'm sure you heard this over and over throughout the program, is the need to build meaningful companies, right? And companies that from inside out. I think that, to Sarah's point too, on how do you build a brand that it's genuine, I think it starts within. And it's the people that you hire. Do they share their values? Do they believe in a bigger mission that you're working towards? And honestly, I by nature of being Hispanic, a woman, an immigrant, I get invited to a lot of D&I conversations. And it ultimately comes down to, are you just being a nice person and a good person, right? Like, are you genuinely caring and empathetic to other people's needs? And I think that if when we went to the program, and I think you've mentioned this before, like, how do you differentiate yourself from other people, other programming that's similar to yours? I always say, I don't know that there's anybody in Oklahoma, at least, that cares more about entrepreneurs the way we do. And I think you show that on a day-to-day basis. And if you do that, I think you're going to be okay. And I think that the founders that participate in the program hopefully feel the same way, and then they carry that on to their teams and the way they carry out business, and then in the way that they give back to the community.
It goes back to that we learned everything we needed to learn in kindergarten, right? Just be kind. Just be kind. It's not hard. Just be kind. Especially in 2020, we need to be kind. So Jefferson, you worked in the criminal justice reform, and we talked about that. Oklahoma has the highest incarceration rate in the world. I don't know where you are listening to this webinar, but yes, Oklahoma does. I know that's surprising. How have you seen, or how could companies get involved? If that's a cause that moves them, if that's a cause that angers them, how could people get involved with that?
Oh boy, lots of different ways, unfortunately. And, I'll give the quick background of how I became involved with criminal justice reform. I was working for that same oil and gas company in downtown Oklahoma City, and one of our 5 areas of influence was incarceration, because we knew that Oklahoma carries that very undignified badge that we've been the #1 incarcerator, not just in the United States, but in the world for a long darn time. And women, we incarcerate more women per capita than anyone in the world, and we've held that title for 30 years. So if I, as a father of two amazing, beautiful daughters, want to create a better future for them, we need to stop leading in such a negative category. The quick overview or understanding of why Oklahoma has that title is because we have a very punitive system. And I think if we want to look at why it's so punitive, and realize that it's not a flattering statistic to carry, incarceration isn't a solution for all. It's a broken system. It's not working. But your question is, how do you get involved? We talk about 2020 and the weight that it has borne on so many of us mentally and emotionally. And you look at mental health, and you look at what is the purpose of incarceration? Are people going to be punished? Are they going to be corrected? It's the Department of Corrections. The word corrections is in the name of the institution. And at this point in time, is Oklahoma doing anything to truly provide rehabilitative services, or are we seeing really high recidivism rates where individuals leave incarceration and come back in 2 to 3 to 6 months because we didn't set them up for success when they left incarceration? So how do you get involved? Working for that company in downtown Oklahoma City, we were giving our time, and we were a second chance employer. We were making sure that there were opportunities that when somebody left the Bill Johnson facility in Alva, Oklahoma, that they could make a meaningful, livable wage working for our company in an oil and gas field. And it's hard work, but it's work that pays well. And it's work that is redeeming and tells those individuals as they leave incarceration that they are not their worst mistake, that they do deserve a second chance, and that through grace and employment, there's a better opportunity for them. Other ways that employees or companies could get involved is just becoming aware of the situation and the circumstance. Becoming a second chance employer is a great start. It's really difficult to find employment after leaving incarceration and having a felony on your record. So knowing that your workplace, regardless of what that is willing to give somebody a second chance and invest in some of the greatest employees you will ever have because they understand and appreciate the opportunity of a second chance. And on the local level, you can always, we've talked about voting. The most influential individuals in the state of Oklahoma as it relates to our incarceration system are the 27 DAs. They're the ones that have the most influence to make a difference in the sentences that are our neighbors. Our neighbors at the end of the day are the ones that are incarcerated. I think 90% of individuals that are incarcerated on one timeline or another will re-enter society. And it's a question of when DAs are elected, what is in mind with that sentencing? Is it punishment or is it rehabilitation? So knowing who your DAs are, knowing how they're elected, or you mentioned that you and I have toured some jails together. What other services are available, at the county jail level? What type of, I hate to say experiences, but what other mental health services are being provided? What other, at this point in the state of Oklahoma, Oklahoma County Jail is the largest mental health service provider in the state. And you shouldn't have a county jail that is your largest mental health service provider. So I think you mentioned that Erika serves on Oklahoma County Health Department, which is a phenomenal resource. I was working at a senior wellness center and had a member that was struggling with mental health, and I called the Oklahoma City County Health Department. So when nonprofits or for-profits work together, they can begin to provide solutions to incarceration and mental health and otherwise. So a bit of a long-winded answer, but it's a really big problem that there are opportunities to look at, even as recently as your local elections for state representatives. Where do they stand on these positions? And today, when I'm done with this call, if I have an issue as it relates to criminal justice reform, I can call my local elected official and tell them that this year in the state of Oklahoma, I want to see meaningful change as it relates to this topic of discussion. So that regardless of whether or not you voted for them, we're their constituents and we have the opportunity to hold them accountable. Go visit our friends down at 23rd and Lincoln and be an advocate for whatever your cause or concern is.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for championing that cause, because that's a hard one. It's a really hard one. And you said that Oklahoma County is the largest mental health provider. But when I hear about what's going on there, there's no mental health being provided.
Correct.
So it's like, that doesn't make sense. And that inmates have to pay to check out books. You know, it's just so broken. So anyhow, yeah. So thank
I get
you.
in the weeds on that one real quickly. But you mentioned books, and we've there's some new leadership at the Oklahoma County jail level, and they have folks that are doing just that. They're getting books donated. So you've got 23 hours a day to spend in a cell, and I won't get into the weeds on that. But what services can we provide? What resources can we donate that make that transition easier? I think you also mentioned that Erika Lucas is on the Diversion Hub Board of Directors, another phenomenal nonprofit in the state of Oklahoma that's looking at how organizations can work together and complement one another to reenter society and work together for a more meaningful solution.
No, well, thank you.
Thank you for your volunteerism, Erika. That's fantastic.
Thank you, Erika. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Sarah, talk to me about a few brands that you admire for the work that they do in their community. Doesn't just necessarily have to be local. If there's anyone nationally or internationally that does good, because you're the expert. Oh, you're muted.
I knew that was going to happen at some point. There are so many organizations doing good things. One of my favorite case studies is actually not recent. It's pretty old, but it was a case study where Timberland gave their employees a bunch of boots to gift to kids in inner cities that had never been out in the country before. And I thought that was just such an amazing story. It was kind of one of the first big case studies that really helped me to see how corporations could connect on a local level through employees. And they would take these kids, just out of the city on day trips up into the mountains and things. And I just thought that was such an amazing way to change these kids' lives that had never really seen outside of the city. So
Erika, you clearly have a heart for empowering women. I follow you on social media, and I've seen several posts about how Kamala has busted that glass ceiling this year. That was one of the bright spots of 2020, having not just a woman, but a woman of color in our White House this next year. And then ACLU comes out and releases that stat yesterday that, what was it, the 1.1 million workers who left the workforce in September, 80% of them were women. So clearly VEST this is the perfect time. This is the perfect time for that. So talk to me about, how have you seen that helping women, or is it just getting started? What does it look like? What are you guys doing?
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that question. I mean, if you look at we actually launched VEST because of the impact that the pandemic has had on women. If you look at the statistics all the way back in March, this is the first year that women have reached double-digit unemployment since the Bureau of Labor started actually counting joblessness for women. So this could potentially set us back decades of economic advancements for women. Women are having to leave the workforce to take care of parents, loved ones, obviously children. And this is all while we're still making less money than men. So yeah, I mean, this is a huge problem. And we launched VEST not because we wanted to, but we really launched it out of the need that we needed to, one, stop the shed of women leaving the workforce. Two, we needed to provide the coaching and the resources needed to get more women in positions of power and influence. So, and this is not, I know I may come across that way because I'm very bold in advocating for the causes that I care about, but this is not to displace man. It's actually men, and there's a lot of data here that men will benefit equally from creating more equitable workplaces because they also suffer from bias that we place on men. So this is more about just leveling the playing field. When you have rooms of people making decisions on behalf of a group of people, and there's no representation on the people that you're making decisions on behalf of, then you tend to be biased. We all have it. I have it as well. And so what we're trying to do with BEST is put those women in positions of power so that we can make decisions that often affect women. So we launched BEST 2 months ago. Happy to say we received, I think we touched a nerve, because we actually have a wait list now of women waiting to be members of BEST. We launched it in partnership with powerful women. Claudia San Pedro, the CEO of Sonic, Kathy Taylor, former mayor of Tulsa, Sue Ann Arnold, and Marie Rocha out of Connecticut. So yeah, we're excited about it. How it works is members, we meet on a monthly basis. We bring some of the best coaches in the nation addressing issues that often preclude women from reaching positions of power. So for example, in December, we're addressing how the gender bias when it comes to negotiation and how we negotiate differently than men. So we're bringing a top coach to come and coach us and lead the conversation. And then again, very similar to Stitch Crew, a lot of the magic happens when peer-to-peer, women to women, are having these conversations about what policies they're implementing within their own companies, how they struggle with negotiation, how are they coaching the new generation of women when it comes to negotiation. So anyway, that's kind of how BEST works. We also have partners. I mean, you're all about how do you correlate corporate giving with good causes. We have partners, BEST Her partners, which basically have the same mission of putting more women in positions of power. So for example, Switch Gear, which is an executive search firm, all led by women. It's part of our Bester network, and they feed us executive searches so that the women in our networks know what opportunities are out there looking for women or for leaders, right? And then we can't guarantee that they're going to get it, but at least they're getting the feed of all the opportunities that are available. So we have a job board through that. We have other partners that also put women on commissions, public boards. We feed those opportunities to the women in our network as well.
You said that's perfect timing for that. Absolutely perfect timing this year. You made me think of, I listened to a speech of Dr. Martin Luther King talking about, he was riding a train with someone and someone was coming down on him, verbally talking to him saying, you know, I pulled myself up by my own bootstraps. Why can't you all do that? And he said, you know, it's pretty hard to do that when somebody's standing on the boot. Or what if you don't even have a boot? So even giving those women that opportunity, you know, what's the number one quote that we hear that Kamala shares is you might be the first to do something, but make sure you're not the last. You know, so I appreciate that you're creating that environment for women to even know about these opportunities and to learn how to level that playing field, like you said. So thank you. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. Let me see. Sarah, did you think of somebody? Oh, you're still muted.
Oh, I was just thinking about companies like, and I think because Eric was talking, the companies that I follow, like Elvest. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but just the type of work that they're doing to spotlight different women in leadership, and also to encourage women to learn more about financial stability. And you know, they actually give them money. They give people money to start an account with, which I think, it's also a sales technique, right? But I mean, it's not a lot different than like a Tom's brand or a Warby Parker, where it's a B Corp type situation. But I just think it's breaking down that barrier to, I can't participate in this, you know, to the lowest, you know, kind of entry level type thing, and then mentoring women up with lots of great content and social media and such. And I haven't looked specifically into different ways that they're giving back to the community, but it just kind of permeates everything they do in terms of their brand. So I think we're seeing more and more brands like that really are just, being built with that in mind. You know, it used to be kind of an afterthought. It's like, oh, we're going to do that. It's going to be siloed over here. And so, and I think a lot of existing businesses, this is such a huge opportunity, especially right now, to reinvent yourself in terms of that way, and take it from a siloed, like, here's a thing that we're adding on over here, and really go back to that foundation, and reassessing, your purpose and why you're there, and building that stuff in, and also not making it just a department in the company, really bringing together people from different parts of the organization to collaborate, and come up with ideas. Because I think that's what we're seeing a lot now too, is where companies are really breaking down those walls. I mean, it's great when you have someone with a financial background, when you have someone with an engineering background and a creative background in the same room solving problems together. You get a lot more sustainable programs and things like that. So.
No, that's great. That it goes back to what Erika was saying about, you have to start day one. If it's going to be authentic about what you choose to be involved in your community, it needs to start with day one and be part of your peers, part of your foundation of what you're doing. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, real quick, Jefferson, our time is getting short. Is it okay for companies to share their stories of good?
Absolutely. I think, I mentioned earlier the company that gave away the money, but they said, hey, let's do it quietly. That's a decision that their leadership made. And that was a cultural, expectation on their own. But at the same time, I think that when you hear about good in the community, it encourages others and it inspires others. There was a story that ran just last night with a partnership between the Thunder and Devon, where they were doing, Christmas goodies. And at the very end, they said, hey, there's still 50 families and there's a need. Call this number, get involved. So that invitation after saying, hey, we're doing this, but inviting others to be a part of it, I think is exceptionally encouraged. And I think there's a healthy camaraderie where people get a little competitive in like, well, if you can do good, I can do good too. Well, I can do good better than you can do good, which again, it's healthy competition. And at the end of the day, it's an end result that we're all inspired by. So yes, share your story, share good.
Awesome. Well, I need to get connected with that company who doesn't want to share their stories of good, and I'll share it for them. Because like you said, it inspires people. And again, 2020, we need to hear these inspiring stories. So definitely. Okay, so everybody, let's go back to Erika, Erika, give us your 30-second shout out, your call to action, your motivational statement for today. What do you want to leave people with?
Oh gosh, I need motivational quotes. What would I say? If you're an entrepreneur, get out of your own head. You can do it. Like Tracy just mentioned, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have everything figured out. You're just going to learn as you go. So get out of your head and launch it, and surround yourself by people who believe in you more than you do, because they won't let you quit, and you won't want to quit because you don't want to let them down.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. I needed to get out of my own head. That's a hard one. Sarah.
Well, I would just say that it's not too late to change. So for organizations that feel a little bit stuck, or feel, well, especially this year, I think just, knowing what to do next. So in that same vein, as Erika said, I mean, I think just it's okay. Just get together and decide what you're going to do next. Look for local opportunities, look for ways for people to get involved, and just, it's fun. Brainstorm, just carve some time out. I saw this company this week, which I thought was so interesting. They were a tea company, and they're doing you could do a 30-minute or a 2-hour afternoon tea with your team remotely, and they send everybody a box and a cup and everything, and then they facilitate and so thinking creatively about ways to bring people together, even though they're on Zoom calls, and just brainstorm, think of how can we, how are we going to make this, this next year? Cause I think it's going to take us a little while to crawl out of this, so how are we going to make this next year, kick it off in the right way? And how are we going to do that for our employees? And how are we going to do that for our community? And I think we just have to, call a mentor. That's what I've been doing, calling people that I haven't seen in a really long time and saying, let's do a Zoom coffee. people that, you know, maybe were really important to me 20 years ago when I was first starting my business, and just checking in on them and seeing how they're doing. And so I think it's all about, even though I would love to hug everybody right now, and that's going to make me cry because I feel like I really miss that part of it. You know, I think that, you know, just checking in with people that aren't in your normal routine right now is really, really important.
I read yesterday that Japan has had more deaths due to suicide last month than COVID deaths. So it's right now. 2020 needs to be the year of mercy and grace. Give yourself mercy and grace. There's hope. There's hope. And you do. I love the thinking outside of the box. I love that tea idea. That's a great idea. I have a friend who she's a founder of Tipsy Artists. She does the paint parties, and clearly, and she's had the world's largest paint party. Well, now we can't meet, and so she's doing those team meetings. So you do paint parties with your team. So she sends you all the supplies, and you all get on a Zoom call together and do it together. So you're right. It's got to think outside of the box this year. We'll get back to hugs, Sarah. I promise. We'll get back to hugs. Jefferson.
I love everything that Sarah said. And I think the first thing that came to my mind when you asked the question, Tracy, was be a good neighbor. And I think everything that she shared is just that. Got a lot of folks missing their loved ones. There's another deal, kind of like the tea, where you can sign up for family game night. And even though you're in Kansas City and Tulsa and Oklahoma City and Colorado and Mexico and everywhere in between, you can still do family game night. Somebody facilitates it for you. It's just virtual. But yeah, it's heartbreaking, the statistics around suicide right now. But be a good neighbor. You don't have to vote like me. You don't have to, go to church where I go to church. You don't have to support the nonprofit I support, but be a good neighbor and love one another. Just show kindness and grace and mercy. And every day, let's hope it gets a little bit better.
There you go. It goes back to, we learned everything in kindergarten, right? Erika's not about degrees. She's not about pedigrees. She's about what we learn in life experience. And we learned in kindergarten to be kind and to be a good neighbor. So that's a perfect way to end. Thank you guys. I appreciate you taking the time to connect with us today on Good Table Talk. And thank you, our watchers, our listeners, for joining us today for another conversation around good. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a story of good made possible. We are here to make good loud. We're here to help you share your stories of good. So thanks again. Appreciate it.